I really want to touch on how there's a direct correlation between events that both happen in Somalia and around communities in and around the world, most importantly and specifically here in the UK. And the sort of view that I would like to take on the matter is that how the complexities of any type of intervention, whether it be both military or political intervention, would be ridiculed by the simplicities of long-term instability and chaos and further turmoil, not only in Somalia, but possibly in other communities in and around the world. Again, here in the UK. The way most of the issues are affected is how we actually respond, because as you would know with most other coverages of the media on other wars in history, like we've looked at most recently, both Iraq and Afghanistan, there is a lot of media coverage. That media coverage would have a bad stigma and negative perceptions further added to the ones that already exist on the Somali community and the youth, to be specific. In 2006, there was a 3-year grant awarded to an organisation that's involved in sort of engaging in ethnic minorities, and this was a 3-year grant. That grant was to sort of try to engage and find out why there are boundaries and somewhat difficulties in the Somali community engaging in British society or mainstream British society. The findings were sort of written in a research paper which would help any organisation that was sort of potentially intending on working with any Somali organisations. And the findings were quite stark, and they portrayed again similarities that were already existed and allowed anyone that wasn't familiar or hadn't had any involvement with the Somali community to form their own ideology, but it counteracted that, and it gave a lot of ideas. And if I just read out a few of the adjectives that were sort of used to describe the Somali community, they said that they were disengaged and marginalised. Hard to reach was advocated a whole lot in the paper. And if you add that to the possible outcome of an intervention, the youth at the moment, if you look at the difficulties, the unemployment which is strife throughout the UK, not just for only black kids, but only Somalian kids, add further to that. The difficulties that are sort of apparent and are most predominant would be that the fact that not only are Somali youth black, which has its own difficulties and ways of preventing them, sort of creating a whole load of barriers, add further to that the fact that they're both Muslim. And again, those carry their own sort of difficulties and have very, very, very stark contrast when you look at someone that's probably from an affluent background applying for jobs. If you look at just purely background and names, I know individuals personally that had to change their names who had all the credentials that you would sort of desire from a CV, but purely because of the background and the name, they were sort of being held back. Sort of, if you look at the filtering process, they wouldn't even get past the interview sessions. In my day-to-day sort of life, I spend a lot of time in courts representing all types of walks of life, but I spend a few days during the week in youth courts, and I see a lot of Somali kids. And what's apparent, and I notice an awful lot, is the fact that there's a lack of awareness with how the law generally works, and that again affects Somali youth. And I think if you look at the way criminalisation of youth is occurred today, there's so much policies and legislations in place, one being the joint venture, where that's used an awful lot in terms of criminalising young youth who might not have participated in crimes, but they're also convicted and tried and put away for merely just being there. And I think I believe personally that any intervention wouldn't improve the situation, because it will bring to light a lot of issues that are maybe causing uprising. If you look at the most recent riots in London, the way they were dealt with was harsher sentencing for anyone that was involved. If you look at the Somali community, the way that would have an effect in the sense where anyone that is here, because there's a clash of both most of the individuals or the younger Somali generation, they were born here, so there's a clash between their British identity and their cultural heritage. And when those two clash, then you would get youngsters that had that thought or believed or had a sense of belonging to the UK or the British society that would feel, well, if there's a military intervention, there's bound to be lives that will be lost. And the sort of emotions involved in that would mean that anyone that's viewing that might not necessarily have a direct or link to Somalia since they've been here for quite a while, but they would have family members that would be involved. And the ramification of that would be having to uprise and choose a side and be further polarised from the fact that you might not be British and you are really Somali. And I think, again, referring back to my position on board of Stopwatch, it's mere sort of everyday stop and searches would have to be escalated because there's already emotions that are stemming through any individual that are stopped. It would be government-led, but we don't have, us sort of public members, we don't have direct involvement with any of the government figures that would be leading the intervention. But there's an immunisation sort of, the police officers are the ones that we sort of deal with on a day-to-day basis because they are branches of the government and they would feel the brunt of it. And if you were approached by a police officer, which I deal with every day, with bad sort of negative ideas of how the youth are, and if you look at all the different sort of symbols or adjectives that might be used to describe it, we've got terrorism, we've got piracy, we've got gun crime, knife crime, which is very, very dominant in most of the societies that are Somali-based in and around the country. So all of those sort of ideologies put together, then you've got sort of recipe for disaster. And I think that is where most of the troubles come from when we're dealing with the youth. And I think the way it's sort of mapped out, not particularly being any trying to sort of speculate, but the forecast, it's only going to be disastrous in my sort of professional or expert opinion. So thank you.